Simplify root 2 plus 3 over root 2 minus root 3. Again, to rationalize the denominator, we're going to have to multiply the top and bottom by the same quantity. And that quantity is going to be the conjugate of the denominator. So the denominator we have is root 2 minus root 3. The conjugate of that is root 2 plus root 3. So we need to multiply the top and bottom by root 2 plus root 3. To multiply all of this out, we're going to have to FOIL in the top and bottom. Let's start with the numerator. If we look at the product of the first terms, root 2 times root 2 is root 4, but the square root of 4 is just 2, so when we multiply those we get 2. The product of the outer terms is going to be root 2 times root 3, which is root 6, so we're also going to have a root 6. The product of the inner terms is going to be 3 times root 2, which is going to be 3 root 2. And then the product of the last terms is going to be 3 times root 3, which is 3 root 3. And then we're also going to have to FOIL out the denominator. The product of the first terms is going to be root 2 times root 2, which is root 4, and the square root of 4 is just 2. The product of the outer terms, root 2 times root 3 is root 6. The product of the inner terms, negative root 3 times root 2 is negative root 6. And the product of the last terms, negative root 3 times root 3 is negative root 9, but that's just negative 3. Now, just like all the other examples, we notice that the outer and inner products cancel. In fact, if you are confident enough that you're doing things correctly and you know that those are going to cancel, you can actually skip those. When we've got a difference times a sum with the same terms, we know that that gives us a difference of squares. So we can take the first term and square it, giving us 2, and then minus the last term squared, giving us 3. It's a shortcut that you can do if you feel confident, if you know what you're doing. Now, in the numerator, there are no like terms, so there's nothing that can be combined. We've got 2 plus root 6 plus 3 root 2 plus 3 root 3. Sometimes that's just going to happen. Then in the bottom, 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And whenever we divide a positive quantity by a negative quantity, we end up with a negative answer. And we can divide each of these by negative 1, which effectively turns each of those terms negative. So this is going to be negative 2 minus root 6 minus 3 root 2 minus 3 root 3. And even though there are 4 terms, we do not have any radicals in the denominator. So this is the simplified version, and it is our final answer.